Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I bring you guys Diablo 4 builds. It is going to be the build that I am going to be rolling in Season 2. There are lots of changes coming up, but the funny thing is that one of the most improved builds was a build that I played in preseason and Season 1, and that is, of course, the Golemancer. Now, I am going to be showcasing this guide on Mobalytics, which is home of the KRIPP'S builds. If you want to see the full written guide, make sure to go to the link below. I have updated this and have been updating this as I play Diablo 4. And I did play a Shadow Golemancer-like build in the past, like I mentioned, and there are several videos that you can see what you can expect from typical gameplay. It's just that in Season 2, we have this new mechanic called Vampiric powers, and these really shape how you play your character. So it wouldn't really be fair for, like, you know, a guesstimate on the playstyle, because the vampiric powers really do shape how the characters function. So why don't we actually let's talk. Why do we want to play a Golemancer? So they actually doubled the damage of Golem, and the Golems, they didn't do like a tremendous amount of damage, but their damage is pretty good. They doubled their base damage, I believe. So their basic attack is going to do double, and the Bone Golem, any Bone Golem, either of the two, the auto attack is a very wide angle cleave. So the AoE portion of the Golem has been scaled up from this boost. Also, the hulking monstrosity on the Paragon node, instead of 40x damage for the Golem, is now 100x. They also buffed a lot of the minion-specific nodes, and we were getting most of the Golem nodes anyway. I estimate that even though most builds will be getting a reduction in power in Season 2, that the Golemancer will be 3 to 4 times more damage overall. So it should actually be a decent build to contend other meta builds. Onto vampiric powers, there are a lot of them. I kind of wish that you could choose like 6 or 7. There is this restrictive mechanic of 25 total points from the 3 categories, but it's not really a restriction. I haven't seen a single build that actually fails to get it under 25. So we're going to use Anticipation. Anticipation gives our ultimate, which is the Bone Storm, 20% cooldown reduction, and a little bit of extra damage if we have damage over time effects. Mostly just want the 20 CDR. CDR has been made a little bit more scarce because the numbers have been toned down for Season 1, and they have not been toned back up for Season 2. So any kind of CDR is very good to have. A lot of characters, in fact, I believe all characters in Season 2 are going to be running Metamorphosis. When you evade, so that's kind of like your dodge roll, you turn to a cloud of bats, becoming unstoppable for 4 seconds, which means you can't be CC'd. And enemies along your path take 160 physical damage and are inflicted with Vampiric Curse. Vampiric Curse is, I don't think it has any significant debuff. I think maybe, yeah, this is whatever. But it enables your other vampiric powers and abilities. So that is actually pretty significant. And 160 damage on your evade is also really significant. That's a big number. You can dodge roll through a lot of targets if you're able to group them up, and necromancers with corpse tendrils are able to do exactly that. So Metamorph is actually really, really good. Coven's Fangs, your Conjuration Companions, deal 52% increased damage to crowd control enemies and chance to curse them when they hit. We don't really care about the chance to curse when hit. We're not really taking major advantage out of the curse, but because the damage is specific to minions, this is not incurring the only 30% of the stat penalties. This is full 52 damage. If you're playing a Minion Necromancer, this is maybe the first or second power you're going to want to get, just because at that point in the game you're going to have very little minion damage, so getting 52 straight minion damage is going to be an enormous amount. Ravenous, lucky hit, so you want to have a little bit of lucky hit, but also for a few other reasons. 20% chance to increase your attack speed by 40% of your total movement speed for 6 seconds. So you want to be constantly using abilities to keep this up. The attack speed bonus is of the entire movement. So you see, if you have 0 movement speed on your character, you actually have 100. That's your base movement speed. And the maximum base movement speed is 200. So if you reach that 200 value, this will actually give you 80 attack speed, and a portion of that will go to your minions as well. This is an enormous attack speed buff. We're also getting Moonrise, which is probably not one that people really expect to be getting, but I'm confident that it is incredibly strong. So hitting an enemy with a basic skill grants you 4 attack speed for 4 seconds, stacking 5 times. So it'll be a 20% attack speed buff. And when you get 5, you enter Vampiric Blood Rage, so you get 160 basic skill damage. It's not clear if this is additive or a multiplier. Just to be clear, it can be a multiplier. Their text patch notes didn't really have a lot of the specifications that we would really need to say how things work for sure. But more importantly, you also get 15 movement speed for 10 seconds, and that movement speed is very important because it once again becomes attack speed through Ravenous. Basically, the vampiric power set that I chose for this character really compensates for the main weaknesses of Necromancer. Necromancer has always been one of the strongest classes in Diablo 4, but they've always been the slowest. So we're scaling crazy move speed, and we're scaling crazy attack speed, and we're playing a minion build, so we can move around really easy. Okay, so what are we using? Let's go through the skills real quick. We're using Reap. We are actually using Reap. It has a few bonuses. Normally, Reap is a little bit too slow, but this build is going to be sporting about 150 attack speed at its peak. So the slow Reap is suddenly not a very slow Reap at all. It's going to just be comfortable to use it constantly because it's just going to be so fast. So we're getting 15 DR for 2 seconds. 2 seconds is normally not a whole lot of time for that DR because it's so slow, but again, we're compensating for that in major ways. 30 attack speed if something that we hit dies within 2 seconds. And we create a corpse. Not too big a deal, but it's not bad. Lucky hit to create a corpse. And we're going to want this for corpse generation, just to have more corpses consuming a corpse. And you get 9 damage. We get the warrior bonus. We always want to get 1 point in thorns. If you have 0 thorns on your character, you need to have 1 point in this thorns. But in some cases, I actually think you can level. And in some cases, if you don't have enough area damage, you can actually get 3 out of 3 thorns. The thorns does go to every single one of your minions. And your minions are generally weakest when they're getting pelted by large AoE effects. But when you have a lot of AoE effects hitting your minions, well, you're actually going to have significant thorns hitting them back. Decrepify with the lucky hit upgrade of Decrepify, very standard for Necromancer. Skelly Mages, damage to Curse, this works in full with your minions. Less damage from close enemies and more. I think it's only 30% that the minions get. We are actually getting 5 out of 5 corpse tendrils, and we are getting the skills on the boots as well. At least you should try to go for that because it's how we're going to keep up Vulnerable. Vulnerable is pretty interesting. They changed it so it's not a straight multiplier, but the thing is that not only was it a straight multiplier, but the minions benefited 100% from the bonus stat because it's not a stat that your minions inherit, it's a debuff on the target. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we still want to get vulnerable really badly because vulnerable in terms of damage bonuses is equivalent to minion damage, which is actually quite rare. So vulnerable is going to be around 3 times more powerful than like damage to crowd control, damage to whatever, all that kind of stuff. Yes, it's all in the same bucket, but with minions, it works a little bit differently because the other ones get scaled down. So we fortify when you or your minions create corpses, and we're going to be creating lots of corpses. The fortify has changed from your base life to your maximum life, and because this character actually stacks life, because your minions inherit your defensive tools, this is actually a major upgrade for this build to a point where I believe you will be able to consistently have maximum fortify on this character, which actually enables you to use the damage reduction while fortified, which is a really good stat because it's one of the least conditional ones if you have consistency on that condition. We're getting Reaper's Pursuit, 15 move speed. That becomes attack speed. Gloom, it's mostly going to apply to our mage skeletons. We'll get to that in a second. Terror, again, mostly to apply to our mage skeletons. Bone Storm, obviously. We actually don't get a lot of the minion passives. It's pretty interesting. They made the Skeleton Priest last like 8 seconds, and the heal happened at the end of its duration. So going from 5 to 8 is actually a bit of a nerf in terms of the healing, but the minions gained a lot more survivability tools. They also gained the 30% of their life at a maximum damage taken from one hit as a passive. All minions get that. So that's really good, but we don't have to spec it. That one gives like minion life and minion armor, but we actually get a lot of life and armor on the character, so I don't believe we actually need that. The Golem Mastery and Shadow Blight. So Shadow Blight actually received a pretty sizable nerf for minions. It used to have a 10% damage multiplier built in, and it no longer has that. It scales further if you have shadow damage over time bonuses, but we don't have those. So Shadow Blight has been nerfed. Why do we get Shadow Blight? The reason is I think this character is going to be like really in the thick of things. It's going to be in the action. It's going to be so crazy tanky that you're just going to want to be there with your minions. If your Bone Storm is hitting stuff, you're never going to take any damage. That's basically how the build's going to work. And I think keeping up Kalan's Edict is just not really viable. Shadow Blight is still quite good, especially for single target. The main buffs to Golem are mostly going to improve your AoE clear, but your actual like single target doesn't really significantly improve from the previous patch. We're using the Bone Golem with the potential to generate a corpse. I think this is actually mistaken. I think this works off of the Golem's base life. So your Golem actually has significantly more life. So if he takes like even a little bit of damage, you'll actually see your Golem creating corpses. Actually a really nice upgrade. We use the Skeleton Mages with Shadow. The Shadow Mages do similar damage to the Bone Mages, which is way more than the Cold Mages, by the way. I think keeping the Bone Mages alive is not really realistic, so you can forget about that bonus. And the Shadow Mages were changed in Season 1 to actually build up Shadow Blight. You have to first stack Shadow Blight, okay, just to be clear. So you have to deal shadow damage to apply the Shadow Blight debuff for 2 seconds, and then your Shadow Mages can stack it to 10. Proc Shadow Blight, proc your Blighted Aspect. But that means is, again, you kind of have to be in the thick of things. We are using the Shadow Bone Storm, which is going to be really easy to put that up, and I think we'll have extremely high uptime on Bone Storm, possibly full uptime, but still you're going to want to reap just a little bit from time to time, especially to get that debuff going. And single target, 100% uptime on Bone Storm might be not too realistic. Corpse Tendrils for Vuln, but more importantly to pull everything together so your Golem can cleave it. The 2 Skeletons and Bone Storm. Nothing too crazy there. We're using Reapers for the 50% chance to generate a corpse. They buff the damage of the melee skeletons, all of them except the Reapers. So with all the damage going up but the Reapers staying the same, I actually feel that it's fine to drop the +2 Skeleton Warriors. So that's kind of new. Just quickly go over the items real quick. So you can see again in the written guide some of the recommended stats. It's pretty similar to before because even though they changed Vuln damage, it's still extremely good for summoners. We're still trying to get CDR and all that. +2 mages and the helmet is fine. Shielding Storm basically gives you invincibility if you have the Shadow Bone Storm up and you want to put Shadow Bone Storm one of your damage slots. Frenzied Dead, I used to have this on the 2-hander. The thing is that while it's really hard to know exactly how much of your attack speed bonuses go to your minions, some of it is going to go to your minions. They also buffed the Paragon nodes, so you're going to get quite a bit more attack speed. The Frenzy Dead is an extremely good legendary power, but it's not an attack speed multiplier. So what that means is if we're already getting a lot of attack speed from other sources, it's going to give you a lower multiplier, and most legendary powers are actually multipliers. So that's something to consider. So we have these new unique pants, and we get 40% damage multiplier while unstoppable and for 4 seconds after. And when you become unstoppable, you gain 50 of your primary resource. We don't really need primary resource, but if you're really going crazy spamming curse, it might be useful. The reason that I think these are really good for Minionmancer is because the wording, and again, the wording might be wrong because we only saw the patch notes and it was missing a few things, but the wording that they said in the patch notes is exactly as it was mentioned on Blighted Aspect. And Blighted Aspect modifies your tooltip damage and actually is 100% effective for your minions' damage. So because of that, I believe that these pants will actually give you, because you get unstoppable with Metamorphosis constantly, I believe these pants will give you 100% uptime on 40% more damage with your minions. So that is really significant. The main unknown here is that we don't know the stats on the pants. It's possible that they gave them some incredibly bad stats, in which case we might actually go back to using rare pants. And if we do that, I'd recommend you use the 20 DR if you've used a basic skill in the last 6 seconds. I'm not currently using that because I don't think I need it, and we're pretty tight on legendary powers. We're using Ghostwalker's Aspect while unstoppable and for 4 seconds after, 25 move speed, and can move freely through enemies. That second part is really big because it allows you to properly position everything that you want to use, and this type of playstyle is heavily reliant on positions. Again, 25 move speed, we're really targeting that 200% total move speed cap, just so we basically remove all the issues with Necromancer and their sluggishness. This is going to be an incredibly fast character if we get everything up and running, and I think it's not that hard to get everything up and running. We're going to be able to run through enemies, and we're going to convert that move speed to attack speed to even, make it silky smooth playstyle for a summoner. One major change for the aspect of reanimation is that it now applies to your golems as well as your skeletons. So putting it in the two-hander, and you're really going to want to get a two-handed scythe. It's the slowest, but minions have a set attack speed. They only care about the actual damage number on your weapon. Scythes have 0.9, swords, two-handed swords, they have 1.0. So that actually means that the same DPS, you're going to get about 11% more damage out of a scythe, and your minions also inherit the life on kill, which is extremely valuable to just keep them topped up. So aspect of reanimation, it's going to be 80% damage to your golems and your skeletons. So this is another almost double damage multiplier that we didn't have on the golem in the previous patch. Blighted in the amulet, so we can get this to 180, tripling damage for 6 seconds. It's not going to have like a super crazy uptime like Shadow Mist. Most of the time, to get really good uptime out of this, you're going to want to use Shadow Corpse Explosion. But I have played and tested as much as I can because we're not quite yet in Season 2. So without the Vampiric powers, I've tested this to try to see how it works, like mechanically, and if it's reasonable, and I don't think it is. I think Shadow Corpse Explosion, while it will increase the uptime on your Blighted aspect, you're going to constantly create situations where you don't have enough corpses. And using the high attack speed to actually leverage Reap and then pass on the benefits of using a basic skill to your minions, I think overall is significantly stronger. I don't expect more than like a 60% uptime on Blighted aspect, but I think that is still really good because your minions get the full bonus. When it comes to AoE packs, Reap and Shadow Bonestorm will instantly trigger it, and when it comes to single target, again, your Shadow Mages will be stacking it as well. So the uptime is better than it looks, even though it's not crazy high. We have to use the Shadow Bonestorm. It essentially extends the duration by 2 seconds for damage purposes for the Shielding Storm option, because even though the Bonestorm may have ended, you're still getting damage over time ticks 2 seconds after it ended. Conceding aspect, damage while you have a barrier. This is again a pure multiplier on your minions. So this is not like a Ring of Mendeln style build. Ring of Mendeln has been significantly nerfed. This is like a pure summoner, but this is the build that Blizzard has significantly buffed for Season 2. In terms of options, you guys can see all the Paragon stuff. There aren't any too surprising options in the Paragons. It's very similar to what I had been using on the Golemancer in previous seasons, for the main exception that I'm actually targeting almost all the Golem nodes. I don't think we need this node, even though it gives you resistances to all your minions. We're actually using, I believe here it's the Mage Glyph, which gives you 35 all resist to all your minions. So because we're using that, I don't think we need that. if you're thinking about like why are we using these glyphs that only buff like mages, are mages even a big part of the damage? So for single target, the mages do a lot of the damage, and for AoE, the golem does a lot of the damage. These bonuses have much higher effect than they say because they are like 100% effective, and some people say that they are multiplied again by the minion multiplier in the skill tree, the passive ones. Like the golems deal 75% damage and health. Well, people say that it multiplies this bonus a second time. So when this gives you like over 200% golem damage, you're actually getting like 300 and something golem damage. And given how hard it is to actually scale the damage numbers of your minions through gear, that's a really big deal. And we're still using the vulnerable glyph up here because, again, we are going to target vulnerable. The vulnerable stat is a powerful one, and I have a pretty big focus on percent armor and life. And just to kind of close things up here, one thing that you may not have seen here is the armor aspect. So the armor aspect has actually been buffed from last patch, and armor has been changed to only apply to physical damage. So like, why aren't we using it? Don't we have enough triggers with Shadow Bone Storm and whatnot? Yes, we do, but we're also going to have incredibly high armor on this character baseline. I think this character can quite easily clear 10,000 armor just because we're getting a lot of armor bonuses on the tree. We shouldn't need the resists from the jewel slots, so we're going to still socket skulls, and we're just going to take advantage of the buffed armor percent values and the armor percent while you have a golem active. What that means is it might not reach like the 13k armor breakpoint that you usually do want to have to clear Nightmare Dungeon 100, but I think we're going to come pretty close to that. We might actually reach it. You know, it's pretty close in some ways, but you're not going to land in that situation where if your character doesn't have maximum armor stacks, it's just going to fall over and get one shot. So it's going to be very consistent. That's kind of the name of the game for this character. Very consistent passive damage, very consistent movement speed, very consistent attack speed, and very consistent defenses. So hope it works out. It is what I will be playing in Season 2. And if you guys want to check it out, make sure to check out the stream. And if you want to see for yourself the details, especially for like the details of the Paragon stuff as I've set it up, because I have taken a lot of time to try to maximize every single point, once again, try to check out the written guide below on Mobalytics. Thank you.